So you'd be hard-pressed to find any application on a mobile device that doesn't make some use of button controls. So we've used them a lot already in this course, and we've just used the traditional regular button. We'll look at some of the other ones that we have available. So I've just created a blank project called button controls. Let's go ahead and go into our main layout file. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of this text view. So let's go ahead and add a regular button, again, which we all have experience with now. It's just a simple button with some text on it. And the next thing we can do is we can add a toggle button. Now, a toggle button is exactly how it sounds. It's basically kind of similar to a radio button or a checkbox, except that it's a button control. Let me actually show you what this looks like. So let's just go ahead and quickly launch this on the emulator. And this can be useful for settings in an application where you want to toggle on and off certain settings. And we can see when I click, it's important to note that you can also easily skin and style these as well. So you don't just have to use the default, but you can see really, really easy to use. So it's basically a button that you can toggle on and off. So another one that we have, and we can go to images and media. And this is where we have controls, obviously dealing with images and video and things like that. But we have an image button. So let's go ahead and bring that in. And we can see by default, like all images, it's taking the application icon. Well, let's go into the exercise files, into the assets folder, where I have some images for you. Or you can use your own images, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to drag this b.jpg image into the drawable HDPI folder. And I'm just going to choose to copy those files there. So now I'm going to select my image button, and we'll go into the properties for it. And if we scroll down, we can see the source for that, again, by default is pulling the application icon, but I can choose that B photo. And there we have a picture of my cat B that I use in a lot of tutorials. So now we can see we easily have a button that's skinned with an image. Now, other types of buttons, obviously we have radio buttons. Checkbox really can be thought of as a button control. So there's all different types. So now we've added these buttons. So how do we actually respond to events on these? So now I've showed you one way to do it in the Java where we create this anonymous inner event handler, which works fine if you have one or two buttons. But in an application where you have a lot of buttons on the screen, that can become very inefficient. So let me show you another way to do it. So I'm going to go to our main.java file, and let me just maximize this. The way I've been showing you to do it is, let's first get a reference to our button. So find view by ID, r.id. There we have all of our buttons. These are the auto-generated IDs for them. So we've done that, and then we've done set on click listener. So we've done this type of thing where we set on click listener, new on click listener, and then basically creates this anonymous inner type of event. Not very efficient when we have a lot of buttons in the application. So what we can do is we can have our activity class here implement the on-click listener interface. So what we have to say is implements on-click listener. So now we can actually respond to events directly in our class. And we can see this is giving our quick fix here to add unimplemented methods. So we're going to do that, and now we can see it's generated an on-click event. So what's going to happen is all of the buttons in our scene, the click events are going to be listened for at the activity level. So we only need to have one event handler function. And inside of that event handler function, we can just say which button was actually clicked, and then we can do what we need to do with it. Now, one of the things we need to do is for each of our buttons, we need to set the set on click listener. So if we say b.set on click listener, instead of creating an anonymous inner type, we're just going to say this, which means our activity. So, whenever this button is clicked, it's going to call this on click method. And it's also going to do it for any of the other buttons that we have in our scene. So let's just add one more. Let's do the image button. Call it IB, find view by ID. And let's choose the image button. Let's add our cast. And now we'll do IB.set on click listener, this. Now you can get some performance gains by doing this because we're not constantly instantiating new classes. So just having our activity implement on click listener can give us a performance boost over, having to do all of these anonymous event handlers. So when the code actually gets in this on click, we can actually, it sends us the view that was clicked. So if I do v.getID, this is actually going to return the ID of the button that was clicked. So I can just put that into a Boolean. So I can say if v.getID is equal to r.id, let's listen for the image button. If that's the case, then let's go ahead and log something to logcat. So log, let's send a debug message. Again, I'm just going to use the Lee tag, and I'll say image button was clicked. And let's do our quick fix. We need to import the log class. Okay, so let's run this now, launch it up on the emulator. And while it's doing that, I'm going to click over to DDMS. Okay, so now when I click on this image, and you'll notice I still have the filter set up in logcat for any tags with the name of Lee. But if I click over here, we can see the image button was clicked. So this is, again, is a different approach in that you only have a single event handler function. And inside of that event handler, you just have to do a simple test of which button was actually clicked. And then based on that, you're going to decide what action to do. But you can get significant performance improvements over doing all of these anonymous kind of inner event handlers. So that's the basics of button controls. Again, they all work very similar, just have, basically checkbox and radio button can be thought of as just like toggle buttons. In a later movie in this course, we're going to get into more into styling and skinning button controls as well.